the industry has been in dire need of a change, and it's been refusing to go to where the audience wants. By and large, the big two, Marvel, DC, have been trying to engineer an audience, have been trying to dictate who their audience is. They've been trying to say, are you good enough to be our fan, our customer?
Characters represent a sort of a transcendent feeling that we all have inside us. That we can be the people that we lionize.
All right, folks, it's great to be back with you talking comics. That's right, Comic Talk with this guy. He's never been with me for a Comic Talk. So that's right, Ironcaster is with me every week on Talk Horror. I know all of you know him, but here he is doing a Comic Talk with me. My friend, thank you so much for hanging out, brother. What's going on?
Oh, it's going pretty good. You caught me at a really good time for this, actually. Like, just kind of unwinding down for some of my day activities, kind of settling for the night. Gotta, go finish watching a movie or two for Talk Hard.
And I've heard they're doing some stuff. So yeah, you want to definitely be ready for Talk Hard. You wouldn't want to be caught with your pants down, not seeing something, because we would know. We would know. No, I thought we both enjoyed some similar comics lately, and I think for me, drifting away from the big two for so long, I mean, literally, I can count on one hand titles that I'm enjoying, and then usually I don't even recommend those titles because they don't have any longevity. There's no evidence. That's like a stacks of evidence. Like, so even though I'm enjoying Incredible Hulk, it's not like every single issue. And I can't tell you, hey, listen, this is going to be a series or a run that we're going to talk about like 10 or 20 years from now. So with that, I did gravitate towards Spawn, but they've kind of become almost like the third leg, right? I mean, IDW, Dark Horse, Image, but now we've seen this thing with Skybound where Kirkman kind of struck this deal with Hasbro, and they got the Transformers and Joe, and we see more than that. And I think for me, I didn't even really know how deep this was going to go. I just heard it's going to be a crossover. I didn't go pick up a Diamond preview. I didn't really get issue number 1 right away, and I was more on board with Titan because we talked about Conan, how they got the license to do Conan, and I was like, okay, that's exciting. Let's do that. And they were very clear, like they were going to go more hardcore with that. But what I want to talk to you about on all that was like, are we seeing a tide away from the big two, but in a way that almost like feels more like cement to move forward from, not just some sort of like, fad that could be gone tomorrow. I don't feel like this is going away tomorrow or anytime soon.
Well, I think what we're seeing is sort of the fall of the superhero as sort of a genre, and it's sort of on the thing is the big facing part of it is the movies. Those are starting to fall by the wayside, and Marvel's, I feel, sort of made the mistake of letting the movies dictate the pace of the comics. That's become the dominant face of the brand. And as that started to slip away and kind of fall back by the wayside, it's given us an opportunity for some other companies to step up and really fill in that void. And I think we are starting to see that with Titan Comics. I think Skybound is doing a great job of taking over that spot. I mean, look at what Todd McFarlane is doing with the toys. He's basically taking over all of the DC stuff. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take up over some other licenses as well.
Yeah, way back when I first got back into doing Pops regularly, I always said that one of the biggest things I would do with DC in particular, I don't know about Marvel, but I know with DC, is I would just start licensing some of the stuff out. I would just say, listen, you might have to bite off a chunk of your tongue, and Twitter's going to go nuts. But for me, it'd be like, listen, EVS, you always said you want to do Plastic Man. Okay, let's just do Plastic Man, or so-and-so you always wanted to do. I know Graham Nolan's always talked about, I'd always love to do Fantastic Four, those kind of things. Just license them out. But with this, I think you really hit it on a topic I think is very fascinating, right? Is the superhero fatigue, the cape and tights fatigue, because we go through cycles, right? Because during the transition from Silver Age and then you into that, what Frank Miller started, and Watchmen kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit, but it kind of shifted. And I've heard Chuck Dixon talk about this. Basically, cowboys and space costume, space stories, and all the. It wasn't a costume superhero type thing. It kind of like was just on the. It was just it was not having a place. If there is that much superhero fatigue, you're right. Maybe because there is a nostalgia element with Transformers and Joe that they're capturing, but more than that, they're giving us something that's different that we're just not getting from the big two, right? Because I can't think of a good robot or even, well, they're so anti-gun and anti-military. Punisher's not even Punisher anymore. So I can't even think of a good like soldier or military or even police-based story out of the big two, or a robot story, or a sword and sandal. They lost the Conan license. So sword and fantasy is all gone as well. So I think is that maybe that is the big shift here.
Well, I think what's largely happening is we are seeing sort of the general audiences are trying to kind of reach out and kind of find something else to fill that gap. Like there's always something around that does fill in that void. Like we're starting to see a little bit of Westerns take a step up more. And I think that we're going to see a little bit more interest in that sort of aesthetic. And I mean, we're seeing, like I said, with the Conan is filling that sort of 80s sword and sorcery, like nostalgia vibe. Like people want to see just stories of, just kind of going back to these basics. They want to see these back to the basics. They want to see people, going back and kind of having these sort of moral, simple stories. They want to be able to kind of go back to the familiar. I mean, we've seen that with the likes of Netflix and the streaming stuff where, the familiar stuff like Seinfeld and Friends and The Office are some of the best performing properties. I think people want to go back to these familiar things, and they're just not getting that from the superhero stuff. So something else has got to fill that void.
Yeah, that is so true. I find myself in the same way. I mean, literally, when the strike happened, our content options got pretty slim right there for a while. We went through about 6 weeks or so where there really wasn't some major thing to hang my hat on to watch. Like there was the typical Disney House product that I was hate watching pretty much because it was just recycled crap every week, and I wasn't having anything and I was binging all of those shows. Like I went through all of Breaking Bad, I went through Better Call Saul, I was doing like 6 different shows. I caught up on Reacher. That was my terminal list. That was all these different things that I did that are good, positive. I think my Mrs. Pops and I rewatched Wednesday again. We had gone through all this comfortable place stuff we knew was good and rewarding. And for me, whenever Transformers and Joe crossed over, because it did it in a very subtle way. It didn't do something. Well, I'll show everybody so everybody can know. A little show and tell. And I want to get your thoughts too on this too. The one thing that they did, now they do to me, they do 2 things. So they do a lot of variant covers, which is something I've been critical with Marvel and DC about. And they do have some variant covers that are, to me, that are a waste of time. However, that is the reverse of Marvel and DC. Their variant covers are like 80%, to me, 80% or more positive. They're interesting. So for instance, you get 2 things. You get interesting character stuff, right? We just get cool character stuff, right?
We got the team lineup, which the funny thing is, like, this lineup here, like, we're not even properly getting until 5-6 issues in.
Yeah, it's sort of a tease of kind of like, this is kind of like the central part of it. Well, one character in particular is not even in it until issue number 5, basically. We get that, and then we get action, right? So this is the other type of variant covers that you get. You get a lot of this. So I had somebody who wanted this, and this was like one of the first ones they asked for. I was like, well, I want that. Can you? Cause I have some of these to sell, and I was like, well, I want this one. And it was like, I want the one where so and so's punching so and so, and then there's another one. This is a lot more subdued, but similar, right? Action, right? And then the final one, which is again, I mean, I love this one myself, but it's Optimus punching. So it's like they're driven towards not just some. Okay, I'll be perfectly honest, man. Green Lantern #2, the cover is basically got Kilowog in an apron, and they're like, it's a food cover. And I'm like, why anyone wants a cover, let alone, and then I don't understand. I feel like the big 2 are just, and then, or you get a variant cover that has nothing to do with the book. There's like a cover I was reading, it was like a Ghost Rider book. And there's a variant cover of Wolverine, and like there was no Wolverine in that issue. It had nothing to do with Wolverine. He's in some other random issue of Ghost Rider, but not that one. And I'm like, it seems like with the Joe books and the Energon books, it seems like they really do get us. Is that how you feel when you go look at this lineup of books and covers and things they pick from?
So the thing with the variant covers is, by and large, we're seeing kind of it's in part actually kind of filling in a desire with all the with the second printings, the third printings. We are seeing more and more demand, so it's a chance to go and really fill in that gap. One of the nice things with, say, Transformers as a property is there's so many iconic characters, so many memorable characters that everyone can, has a chance to have a great action pose or have a great bit of, desire. I mean, the big thing I think that's really helping though is the fact that these are diehard fans of these properties who know exactly what they want in the comics. They know what they want on the covers. And I think that's the big thing that's going into it, is that you have people who love comics as a medium, who love these brands as, as lifelong fans, know what they want to see on these covers. They don't want to see, the Autobots having a car wash. Well, I mean, then again, that actually might not be a bad idea.
They were talking about, like, I mean, IDW got so far off the rails. There's like they're talking about the Transformers, but still talking about like gender and stuff. And you're like, okay, these are robots. Like, what are you doing? But with this, and speak to a little bit, because I think if you've never read Transformers or you don't know anything about Transformers, if you just jumped in with issue number 1 to now, you sort of get a night. You'll understand us OG fans of the 1980s, because it feels like we're in an alternate universe to that one, but not very removed from it. Like, it feels very comfortable. It is very comfortably adjacent to that same story.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing though. It's familiar, but just a little bit different. In a way, it's almost like what you see with, say, movie adaptations. Like, say, look at Dune. There were some changes made along the way, but it's familiar enough that anyone's going to be able to kind of get the gist of it. Okay. And the big thing that I think is really helping is that you're getting a chance to see these little spotlights of this or that character along the way, where people might not know much about, say, jazz, but they get this little hint of the guy. So a music fan might pick up on the fact that he's making references to bass lines as he's like having his action pose. And then someone might say, oh, dude, I want to know more about this guy now.
Right. Yeah.
They're finding a way to sell these characters, to make you want the miniseries. Like, tell me more about Reflector.
Yeah, and I think I felt that way with when I read Void Rivals, because I was a little late to Void Rivals, but whenever I read it, and Jetfire was there, right? And I'm like, whoa, holy crap, this is connected. Like, oh, okay, I see what you guys are gonna do. And I think what they did was, and agree with me or disagree with me here, is they don't rush it. This is a very, very patient approach to the story building. Like the cameo, because they kind of pay homage to the I think it's Transformers number 2, right? Transformers number 2, where you basically have the reveal with Duke, and it's just his patch. It's just his name is on the patch, but it's basically this, right? It's this interaction that turns very bloody for one of the pilots. This is well, that's still a first printing. It's just a variant cover for first printing.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, so it wasn't let's interrupt the Transformers story for having a G.I. Joe subplot. No, we just made a cameo reference, and then we deal with the fallout of that interaction, what happens in that sequence in the Duke number 1 issue, where he's dealing with, basically, it's unspoken because now the reader should know, but it's the PTSD of what he saw, what he went through. It's like it's not really, he keeps talking about it. No one even believes him. But it's really done well and slow, so you, the reader, are not overwhelmed with the G.I. Joe verse of having to know who 26 characters are. I didn't have to keep looking up like which character was which. Did I have them right? Whatever. They do a good job of just keep stacking, and they do the same thing with Transformers. They just kind of keep adding and building on it.
I mean, that is sort of the beauty of it, is that they were able to give you just enough of that to kind of go into it. And then it's off in its own book, kind of exploring that a bit more, where Duke hasn't gotten over that. He's trying to kind of deal with the fact that, like, hey, I saw something crazy, but everyone is telling me to keep this thing under the rug. And this is like something world changing. Like, good men have died because of this. And we're supposed to act like nothing happened at all. No, I don't agree with this. and you're getting a chance to see that kind of play out in that book, while it's also taking that to kind of go and then set up further events down the road. In over in Duke, I want to see how we eventually get him to the GI Joe team, because we know that's coming. It's just a matter of when. And I'll be honest, like, as much as I want to get there, I'm okay with the buildup. Like, they haven't drawn it out too much yet. Now, if this were to go like 12 issues and before we even get a proper GI Joe book in this Energon universe, then I might have a problem. But I'm along on the ride right now.
I couldn't agree more, because I feel like in Duke in particular, he's a lone wolf trying to figure this out, and it's almost he's being treated as like a conspiracy theorist. But we do get references along the way. Like, I think in issue number 3, we have references to Hawk and stuff, so we know that GI Joe exists, and we know that he's playing outside of that. And you have sort of like talking to the audience through characters, like, we know, and you guys know, Duke is an honorable man, but we also know he's acting crazy. We don't know why he's acting crazy. So it's like you're just waiting for the layers to sort of kind of keep getting peeled back. So the other thing too, I want to get back to the variant covers just briefly, because I think this goes to what you were saying earlier about strike their pose. They're doing things like this. If you just have a character that you like that just sells comic books. Like, if you just have this is because this is the first time Duke appears in it. It's like you just have just these random, and there was a Destro one as well, which I already sold. Someone already got my only copy of the Destro one. Because I think this lends itself to interest too, because I kept thinking back to when I was in the 90s, at the very beginning, and I used to think to myself, a cover would sell a book. And so many times I look at covers now and I'm so uninterested. I feel like with Transformers and Duke, not so much Void Rivals as much, because I think that's probably the lesser of the 4 titles. And then, of course, Cobra Commander as well. They have covers that would sell a book. I know this is almost like, because you're more of an anime guy, you really are astute at knowing a lot more of that kind of stuff. Do you at least get that sense a little bit with those type of covers? If we're going to have a variant cover, at least you feel like it's eye candy enough to reel you in?
Yeah, well, the nice thing is, like, they're putting out some decent covers for like second printings, third printings, that are making me look and say that, like, as much as I might prefer to have a first printing, that those additional printings are looking pretty nice. Like, I happen to have one up here, just to show off real quick, for a third printing of Transformers #2. Like,
oh yeah,
I want to see RC kicking Frenzy and Rumble.
Yeah. Again, action. We talked about that earlier too. Like, one of the things they do well is they're not just having these generic and boring or bland, like, variant covers or multiple printings. And some of these things are already into their third printings or more. I have a Duke for second printing. Yeah, here. So yeah, I have multiple printings as well. So yeah, they just lend itself to like, oh, that looks cool, man. Let me go check that out.
They've done so well that Void Rivals #1 is on its 6th printing.
Wow, that doesn't really surprise me in some way, because this whole series has exceeded all of our expectations and then some.
I can't think of any other book that's gone on to be so well that it's on its 6th printing, 7th printing. I haven't heard of that in quite a while.
Oh, right. Yeah, usually that tends to lend itself more to like the standalone graphic novel types. Killing Joke was probably the biggest example, because Killing Joke is, once you get into even to like the later printings of Killing Joke, some of those are actually worth a lot of money because they're actually rare. Like, at some point, the collector's like, I don't need another copy of this. And who reads 5th or 9th printings, right? No one collects those, right? Well, guess what? When people start realizing, oh crap, the 9th version of whatever, to something that now that's so old. But yeah, and I because I think people are thirsty for the good story. And talked about the fun factor, because Mrs. Pops was teasing me, because I think it was Duke. I don't know if what I was behind on, but I read, I think, Duke and Cobra Commander the same night. And I was just, all I had in my head was fun. All I had in my head was, I am having fun. I know we talked about this on Talk Hard multiple times, but like that. Talk about the fun factor of the Energon universe for you.
So I'm coming into this as more of the Transformers fan. G.I. Joe was there, but I mean, growing up in sort of the late '90s, like there wasn't really anything GI Joe that was really keeping that alive and well. Whereas I had that with Transformers. The books have now gotten me to kind of go back, and I'm starting to read through the earlier stuff. So it's got me wanting to now go back into this world more, where I'm going back to look at the older Marvel stuff. I'm getting excited every time I see these books, and then I gotta stop. I gotta like send pictures. I gotta send friends, and you know we're having a laugh over these books. Like, oh, did you see where Optimus Prime suplexed like Starscream, and did you see where Reflector gets blasted? And it's the fun action that has really held itself up largely because of the art. Like it's some solid art that I look forward to every single week. And a lot of that was largely Transformers centric, but I mean we have those moments too with the Duke book and with the Cobra Commander book. Like after reading through Cobra Commander #2, Nick Weiser wound up over on the comic stream when we were talking about it. That night he wound up buying a Buzzer action figure. So it's got me now start to look at the other ancillary material, look at the other media. Like I want to immerse myself into this world more. I'm now looking forward to picking up the next Transformers role-playing game rulebook, the next G.I. Joe rulebook.
That's true.
It's got me wanting to
it has made all the old stuff just soar in popularity and price, interest, like you're saying, is 100%. And Cobra Commander surprised me a lot. And I don't have much for Cobra Commanders handy because I actually have some of those in the other room. I sold a few of them already. So this is one I just picked up. And this is a completely different tone. And that's another thing we haven't really spoken to, is that all four of the main books so far really do, and really the G.I. Joe proper, which is not really connected quite yet. But I feel like they have just a little bit of a nuance with their tone, that they're all a little bit different, right? I feel like Duke, but Cobra Commander he's a villain, and they treat him as a villain. I don't want to say it gets rated R, but there's at least blood splatter and stuff that have, especially in issue #2. They push the envelope for like how young you want your kid, because it depends on the 8-year-old. Like, I mean, it would be for most kids, but because a lot of stuff's off camera, but it's like, I mean, off panel, but if you got a squeamish 8-year-old, you might, maybe a 10-year, but if you got it, but look at the noir feel of Cobra.
Ooh, this is a 9.8 too.
Oh yeah, well, it's just beautiful. It just for anyone that can be a fan, and all I do is hear the guy's voice. All I hear is the animation. All I want to do, I've watched like, I didn't even do videos, and you know how bad I am about like doing things for content, and I'm like, I watched like 6 or 8 G.I. Joe episodes just back to back to back to back, because it just got me, my gears were just running after reading some of these books.
Yeah, it's nice too, because you have those 24-hour like YouTube channel and the the Tubi channel. You have the Pluto TV has a G.I. Joe channel, plays this stuff on repeat. It's got me kind of going and checking that out. Like, yeah, maybe I will watch an episode or two. Yeah. And and not only that costume there was a great little throwback for anyone who's from the Transformers days, with like, what was it, Old Snake or Old Boa, when it was basically the Cobra Commander character. It was
the good thing too about watching old Joe, especially the original series, is because it's such a formula, right? You pretty much have a set formula for how the story is going to go. It can kind of be on, and you don't really have to be like glued to the TV and watching it. So it's not like you're watching like the Transformers movie. Because the Transformers movie, it's got like a lot of interesting elements, and you don't want to miss out on some of the art and some of the G.I. Joe cartoon. Of course, you're just going to have some of the similar things and some of the similar, and then you can pause it and rewind a little bit to watch Flint or Lady J steal the scene, and you can watch Scarlet and Duke team up for this shot or whatever. But yeah, man, I thought it'd be fun for us to chit chat a little bit about the fact that we could have a whole time talking about that. We're both can't wait for the next issue of. We're talking about just these 4 right now. These 4 comics, one each week, every week, maybe more, maybe depending if you want to do the G.I. Joe or you're doing back issues, that have nothing to do with the main 2, and like, shame on them. You know what I mean? Good on Hasbro. Hopefully they're going to continue to do things. Good on Todd for getting the license to do some of the figures and stuff like this too. So super good. And then we talked about it briefly with Titan. And I'm behind. I didn't read Savage yet. Savage Sword dropped this week. I haven't got my copy yet. I didn't read it yet. I actually went back and read old ones. I did what you said earlier. I went back on the digital file and read the original, the OGs of Savage Sword, where I read, I mean, like Red Sonja running around with her chainmail bikini on. I mean, I was reading Savage Sword like 6 or 8 issues, and the art. It's like what you talked about earlier, the art. And this is a variant cover, but this was pretty faithful. This is Doug. Yeah, Doug Braithwaite does a lot of the art for the actual book. So this is a Conan 3. Okay, this is a Conan 3. Guys, this is lost in the big 2. That kind of detail.
It's a callback to like a certain like kind of air, that certain style that it's just not done by them. They'd rather kind of go for their own familiar formula with it. They're not willing to kind of go back and look and say, what worked before. And whereas with Conan, it is nothing but that. And ultimately that's what people want. They want the familiar. They want that comfort food. And Conan, while kind of coming out and doing some new stuff, is doing just that. It is being that familiar thing to a legacy character.
I felt like I didn't need to know anything about Conan to jump in and read the Conan book. But I also felt like they were doing homage stuff, but not like on the nose. Like there was little nuances, especially once you get into like issue 7 and stuff, like throwback right to the movie and things like that. You have things that happen right out of the original books. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Conan, the series, or Savage. I mean, I've read dozens and dozens of books, but I'm not going to pretend that I read all hundreds of them. But I felt like there's enough in there. I mean, this was first off, guys, Titan's willing to do things that Marvel was not willing to do. This is more of a rated R type thing. It's not crazy graphic, but it's graphic enough to be a little edgier. Not every single book is, but they're a little edgier. And they treat him more like an actual barbarian, which is so refreshing. I don't know about you, man. I love the fact that Conan was actually a barbarian in this series compared to how Marvel gets at time. Marvel, he's just a dude walking around. He really wasn't a barbarian. It's how I felt in some of the Marvel books later, especially I'm talking about the last 10 years or so of things that have come out. I pick up a Conan book or whatever and be like, oh, this is just, I don't say boring. It's still Conan, but it's like, I don't know. He's a little lower T than he used to be. Not in Titan. Titan raised it up, man.
Well, I mean, that was largely because they have sort of the Disney overlords who are basically forcing them to, play by a certain set of rules, but while at the same time trying to also adhere to what the license stipulates, because heroic signatures is very, very protective of the character.
Yeah.
So it's a case where we have a legacy character that is super well protected for who the character is, for the voice of what it should be. We're certainly not about to get a Conan the Barbarian bake-off comic book.
I don't see that happening unless he's there to slaughter everyone doing the bake-off, or it's a bunch of hot chicks that he's going to drop a money bag on and then the next panel is him with all of them. I mean, that'd be the only way I could see the bake-off making, Conan number 9 or Savage Sword of Conan. But what was it about it because you heard it was coming, and you and I had interacted long before this actually landed. We knew about when the license changed hands. We talked about, when this book would drop. When you got your first book, when you got Conan 1 or whatever, when you got there, what was that feeling like, and how did you know, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is actually going to be this good? Or what was your thought process like? That was my response, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're going for it. I really couldn't.
Well, I will say for me, the big thing that kind of gave me some faith, a lot of faith in it, was hearing Andre giving like glowing praise.
Okay.
Andre from Midnight's Edge. Yeah. And he is probably the biggest Conan fan around. So when he was getting excited, I was kind of sitting up in my chair and I said, okay, let's see where this goes. I want to check this out for myself. And then when that free comic book day Conan comic came out, I was so relieved to see it was absolutely everything he had hyped it up for. And that it just kept going. It's been going strong ever since. And much like what I said with Transformers, it got me to turn around and pick up some of the older books.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that even so for me, even now, and I don't even know where we're at on that market. I really haven't done any research to figure out where like the back issues are on that. I can just tell you, if you're near a store and you can get to that store, you probably can get reader copies of Conan books. Conan books are one of those odd properties that Red Sonja and stuff as well. But Conan is like, it's not been treated well by collectors, like investors, speculators. It's more like just sort of out there. It doesn't really have sort of like a legacy of, all these are going to cost, they're all going to go up in value. You can find copies of these, and you're going to find a lot of like busted up copies. So you can find a lot of vintage Conan at pretty reasonable prices. And I only will add the caveat with what the cover is, because if it's got some of those covers, especially some of the artists that have done some of these covers, that's going to be your price point issue, where some of them get kind of pricey. But I have found them for like $5, man. I found Conan back issues for $10 and less. Now, some of them can be kind of ratty, but for that, I'm like, that's a get somebody into Conan price. You know what I mean? That's just to get someone into it. Like, if you never had one before, like, I'll just give you one for $5. You know what I mean? That's a get somebody into it for price. At $5. So yeah, I think a lot of back issues are manageable.
Yeah, well, I think largely it's because, well, one, the magazine format for a lot of it, like the Savage Sword of Conan, has kind of thrown your typical comic collectors off a bit, which has kind of lended itself to being able to make some of those affordable, because I was able to get some of those issues for like $3 a piece.
Yeah,
and they all have beautiful covers.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing you can say about the Conan comics, is that a lot of the, especially the Savage Sword era, has some downright beautiful art. Like they wouldn't look out of place just on someone's wall framed.
And that's one of the things I think for me when I look at these books, and people give me grief, variant covers, they give me grief over graded comics. I get it, I don't care, whatever. I'm a nuanced person who has a foot in all of it. I like to read them, I like to collect them, I like to invest in them, I like to showcase covers. I will rat up a book that I've read 100 times. I do a little bit of everything. I don't really do any one at any extreme other than like a book. Like the Transformers books for me, I'm at the point now where maybe I'll regret this. Maybe this is a hot take for those of you out there in the comments. You will let me know. I haven't had this much fun. I told this to Loki. I don't know if I told you or not. This Transformers run, I'm going to say that that's what I call it, but it's all of it, right? It's the Joe, everybody understands it. It's the Energon stuff. I haven't had this kind of fun since like Nightfall, since like Death of Superman, where I'm like, I finish a book and I want another book. Like I haven't had this much fun of I want a book. So I am so bad as a consumer. I'm so bad. You're competing with someone like me, that the last time I walked into the store, I walked over to the Transformer section and they had about that much, and I bought every single book. I just bought them all. I have them all. A lot of them are right here. I've already sold like 5 to this person. You got 3 they're going to this person. It's like, what are people looking for? Whatever. If I make a buck or two, cool. Guess what? The next time I go to another store, I have an extra buck or two to buy the next stack. Because to me, I mean, even if this fizzles out, let's say it gets to, like you said, issue 12 or so, and obviously Cobra Commander, I think, is a 6-part miniseries and things like that. So let's just assume we end up with like a library of 40 books. That seems like a practical number, right? 6 of this and 8 of this, and let's say it's about 30 to 40 books. It's not totally comparable to Nightfall or Death of Superman, but that's kind of like a nice legacy of, hey, have you ever read the Energon books? Oh, no, you haven't. Okay. It's a crossover between Transformers and Joe and Cobra Commander, Void Rivals, and then Joe comes in, and then and you're like, oh, okay. This does seem like something that we might be talking about years from now. I could be completely wrong, but I know I'm enjoying it to that level right now.
Yeah, the thing is, like, if in this hypothetical it fizzles out, I think this would still be a great place to point someone to start with these properties. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, what should I do to start with Transformers and G.I. Joe? You just say, well, check these out. Like, this is a great little starter series. It gives you a good little intro to sort of these two properties. And I'd say, by and large, it looks like fortunately, the GI Joe stuff is going to be building itself to give us the proper team. And I think the biggest part of it is the reveals we're waiting to get, because there's iconic characters that in both these series have still not come in. Like in Transformers proper, we still haven't seen Megatron make his grand reveal. We haven't seen
we've had these little cameos and little breadcrumbs are dropped for like Destro and Megatron in particular. Those would be the big two, right? The big two that we like. We know they're there, but we don't. They're not. They have not had any like a footprint on the story or anything like that of any major things. Like we just know stuff's happening. Those are the two big things right now that have been teased. But I think there's so much more, like you said. I feel like, yes, you're right, because even if we do start to fizzle, imagine the twist is a Destro machine or Megatron comes to life and does X or Y, or maybe this creates some sort of major thing with Bumblebee. They really don't have any major footprint. I say footprint on like the story arc and things like that. And I think that's why this has gone so well for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, there's just these big colossal figures within these franchises that were that the old school fans are kind of sitting in their chairs with that anticipation for, like, when's Shockwave going to come in, or hey, when are we going to get combiners like Devastator, like for his grand appearance? And I mean, even with the G.I. Joe stuff, like we haven't seen Snake Eyes yet.
No, we haven't really scratched the surface of the Joes. The Joes have such an interesting dynamic team that the cartoon kind of like plants layers for, but then if you get into the comics and some of the lore, there's a lot of really fun stuff they can work with. And they actually do things in this last issue of Cobra Commander, which I'm like, they introduced a character. Well, they kind of introduced a character previously, but they introduce a character and then they eliminate the character. At least we think so. I'm like, they're bold. That is, we don't get that anymore. We don't get bold decisions.
Well, the other part of it is that I'm looking forward to is talking with the people who aren't necessarily fans of these series, because I want to see their reactions to when, like, we get the big reveal of, like I said, of Storm Shadow. I want to see like people who are coming in with this as their first time with these legacy franchises. I want to see which characters like that Skybound decides to really gravitate towards and prioritize. Because the big shock in the first issue of Transformers, where they kill off Bumblebee, it opened an avenue for a character like Cliffjumper to sort of step in and take that limelight. And he's a kind of a little background character who's literally has this joke of being not Bumblebee, right, that he can exist and potentially become someone's new favorite bot.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine, because in Duke, how bloody and intense and graphic, almost Berserker Wolverine, those sequences would be with a Snake Eyes or that's crazy to think about. Yeah, that's really, really spot on. And with Conan, because they haven't shied away from that. They haven't shied away from the barbarian. They haven't shied away from the blood. They haven't shied away from the magic. All the other stuff that goes along with that type of genre. I feel like, even though at times I'm not as connected to Conan as much as I am these other properties. These other properties are closer to my love, where Conan, I'm more like, I do enjoy it. And the thing for me with Conan is I can do Conan for a long while and then take a break and then jump right back into Conan and I feel like I never missed a beat. With Transformers and Joe, I'm living vicariously through some of those Uber fans like you are. I'm watching people experience it for the first time. I'm enjoying every single book, like setting up something else. Like I just love all that. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, and the thing is with the Conan stuff, we're sort of filling in little gaps between the iconic stories. Like they're avoiding like Black Colossus. They're avoiding the Phoenix and the Sword and Tower of the Elephant.
Yeah, right.
That it's a chance to kind of help poke in little places here or there to be able to tell stories and have adventures. So that way it still feels like it's the same character, just he's off doing other things.
Yeah, I really, really, really enjoy it. And I'll do one last thing, and I'll let you see what you want to throw out there. When I saw this, I was like, they get fans. I don't know how a diehard Conan fan doesn't go and chase one of these down. That variant cover When I
Yep.
saw that, I'm like, okay, I don't even know if I can recoup my money. I don't even know if I overpaid or underpaid. I don't really know, and I don't really care. Like, holy cow, what an incredible! See, you get it, guys. They get it. Like, if they when they do multiple printings, they want to do this is what they're doing. There's not, like you said, there's not a food challenge. There's not a Red Sonja's making cookies for him or anything like that. No, that's what they do for variant covers. So yeah, yeah, good stuff. And when I said game changer, I think what I meant was most of us have some sort of limited resource on how much money we have devoted to spending on comics or a hobby or whatever it may be. And I know a lot of that money had already been diverted away from the big two with what's happened with anime, what's happened with a lot of indie comics, Comicsgate, crowdfunded stuff, and just actual other indies like you and I have talked about many times. But
Yep.
now we see something that, because like you said before, there are such mainstay IPs and properties, you feel like the traction can only keep getting more as long as the word keeps getting out. That's why I keep hammering the same thing. Too many people are watching this going, Pops, you already talked about Transformers 5. You already talked about this. You just did a Cobra Commander video. Yeah. Yes. But if I could reach one more person, I could find one more person, it gets them one more sales. It gets the ball rolling even one more. I think that's what I'm trying to do. I think I'm trying to encourage everyone to continue to talk about the positive things as well and not just pile on another Tim Sheraton, Alan Scott comic book. I'm done with that. I'm bored with that.
The industry has been in dire need of a change, and it's been refusing to go to where the audience was. By and large, the big two, Marvel, DC, have been trying to engineer an audience, have been trying to dictate who their audience is. They've been trying to say, are you good enough to be our fan, our customer? But that's not how it works. And if they want to go ahead and keep doing that, that audience has gone elsewhere. And Titan and Skybound have done it. Anime has done it. Manga has done it. People are going crazy for One Piece. People want to talk about. People want to have things to nerd out about and share and express and love it. And it doesn't seem to be Marvel, DC.
Well, let me tell you what, guy. This guy knows his comics. He's on regular shows with Nick Weiser. He's doing This Week in Geek. He's been on with T-shirt now, doing sort of a mini Week in Geek. He's doing his own content. All the details will be in the description. You can see that. He beat me to the punch on a couple videos where he's talking about comics ahead of me, which is exactly what I want, man. I want more people to. Wakazashi's Tea House is a great friend. I'm going to put his link in there too. He's always, cut it right there when some of this stuff drops. And I think that's what we have to do. We kind of have to put weight in the other side of the scale and not keep throwing weight on just the negative side of the scale. And it's almost like be our own, be PR for some of these things that are so good. And then ask, and is it a ridiculous question to say it's a game changer? Maybe, but it may not be for like this year. Maybe this year we look back at what the best comics of 2024 are. And like in 23, most of us just kind of lumped all the Energon books together. But in reality was Transformers and Duke and Cobra Commander. And these are the ones I'm looking forward to the most. Conan, this is what I'm looking to the most. I'm not looking for, I wonder what happened to Incredible Hulk this week. Even though I don't have a problem reading Incredible Hulk, I think it's okay. It's not something that I'm going to be like, listen, guys, I know you haven't read Incredible Hulk and you haven't read Marvel. Well, it's not like I can't think of anything that's been like that, for sure.
Well, the issue there is because they're so tied to these major corporations, they have to fundamentally keep them basically where they are the same. They have to kind of remain stagnant. Whereas we're seeing some changes here with these things. And I would say the difference between, say, Marvel having to keep Spider-Man or Doctor Strange stagnant and Conan staying stagnant, it's a little different because Conan's able to go out and show some blood, show some violence. He's able to be exactly what people expect of him. Whereas they don't want to do that with the big two.
That's true. That's very, very true. So, all right, Caster, my friend, I know I plugged a couple of things that you do. It speaks to anything else that you want to plug, maybe a video that you've done recently or anything else that you want to throw out there for folks.
All right. Yeah. So I just did a little recording in my car the other day after I just got out of seeing Dune Part 2. And it just kind of gave some general thoughts to it. And Monday nights on my channel, I'm doing the Mech Pit chat where we're talking about some big robot stuff. So more Transformers fun if you want to talk about that over there, or maybe you want to come talk about some Kamen Rider or the new Super Sentai series. This is all stuff in that little wheelhouse that it's kind of in the same vein of let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's help breathe that oxygen in.
That's awesome. Well, folks, again, all his links are there, so you're subscribed to this guy. If you enjoyed even an ounce of this, check us out on Tuesdays for Talk Hard. When you guys are catching this, you probably already have seen us talk about some of this kind of stuff. But yes, Aliens, Conan, be back on Halo at some point. But go back into the library, go back into that playlist and look at some of the movies and stuff that we talk about, because a lot of that stuff is not been negative. It's been positive recommendations. Us treating one another of some of our favorites to things that we haven't seen or seen for the first time, those kinds of things. But Ironcaster, it's a great man. You've become a great friend, and I appreciate you doing this, hanging out with me, getting us back on track with some comic talk. And thank you so much for doing it. And everybody out there, hit us up with those comments, some of the things that you're reading and enjoying. Maybe you can dust off something from the past, or maybe something that's what I'm finding too. I'm finding stuff, people recommending stuff that I have either never read, or maybe I've realized that I had only read parts of things sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I didn't read them in order, or I didn't read them. You know how things are. They were coming out once a month. You read 1 and 2 when they came out. You didn't read them again. At some point, you had the other ones. You know what happened, but you didn't like sit down and read them all as like a story. Oh, it's been kind of fun to do some of that. So I love some of those recommendations as well. So, but folks, take care. Till next time, be blessed. Talk hard. I am Pops. See you.